I'm sitting here at Lucky's place in the middle of the loop road in the Everglades. Lucky Cole, famed denizen of the Everglades, art photographer and raconteur. And Lucky, I want to ask you, you knew the man Ervin T Rouse that wrote the Orange Blossom Special.
Yes, I did.
I'm pretty sure you must have some stories about him.
Well, just a few. Of course, my favorite story is my first time I ever stopped into the Gatorhook Lodge. I was out here on Loop Road with a young friend of mine. I was pretty young myself, as a matter of fact. Probably in my late teens. And I was down at my buddy's Ben Wolf's out for the weekend hunting. And this buddy of mine and I were heading back in my old Ford pickup truck. And you could hear the Gatorhook. It was roaring. You could hear the music for a mile away or more. The fiddle playing, the singing, the hollering. And we got on down there close to it, and I told my buddy that was with me, he's probably about 17, I said, you know what, let's just hop out of the truck here, go on in and get ourselves a couple of beers, and look around a little bit. And he was really nervous and worried about it because, you know, he's 17 years old, out here in the swamps with me, never been out here before. And I told him, I said, nothing to worry about. I said, out here they don't even check for ID, they don't care. So we pulled the old pickup truck up across just past the entrance to the bar, and on the opposite side of the road there was an opening there that we could pull in and park, and you'd hear all the hooting and hollering. And he and I got out, walked out back of the truck there, and headed over across the dirt road up to the steps. And as we're getting over there, there's this big old burly hunter standing up on the landing of the steps, leaning against the support post there for the overhang. Had a big old Bowie knife hanging down on one side. Big gray beard, longer than mine, down here somewhere like this. And chewing tobacco. You see him chewing. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I gotta squeeze by this big old bear, you know, to get to that door. And as I'm getting up close to the door and I'm just about to put my foot down on the first step and get a hold of the railing there, and he turns. First he turns to look at me, he turns back and he spits out a big wad of tobacco, and the juice is all running down his beard and dripping and nasty looking. He looks back at me and he goes, "Boy!" And I froze. Man, I froze right there. Had my hand just about to touch that railing, just about to put my foot down, I froze. And he looked around at me, he said, "Boy!" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "You got a gun or a knife on you?" I said, "No, sir, I sure don't." And he looks over at my truck and he looks at my friend. He said, "We better go get one before you come in here." So I quietly just backed up, turned around, started walking towards my truck. My young friend followed me. We got back in the truck and we drove back to Miami.
So when did you ever actually get to meet Ervin Rouse?
Heck, I mean, he was up and down Loop Road all the time. I mean, he was always there at the Gatorhook, and you'd see him in different places out here. He had, well, I met him at Gatorhook, you know, several times, many times after that. But he had a following. He had a check that came in every quarter, and I have copies of the old royalty checks from Orange Blossom Special, and this would be back in the 50s and 60s, and he was getting $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a quarter for his royalties. And I mean, think about it then, you know, back in the 50s and 60s, how much money that was in comparison to now.
It's a chunk of change, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And he would get that money, he'd go buy himself a brand new Cadillac, and his pockets would be filled with cash, and he'd go around to all these honky-tonks out here, not just Gatorhook. He'd go down to Pinecrest, he'd dropped into Sullivan's now and then, even though it was a much calmer place.
Where is Sullivan's?
Well, Sullivan's is another half a mile west of us, where the S-curve is. There's nothing left there now except for the steps, like most of these places. All of them were built out of wood. So the only thing left is the steps, if they had a landing, the steps and the landing, and whatever they used to make concrete columns on top of the cap rock to support the building, keep it up off the water. and it was also all cypress too. If I'm not mistaken, the original building was built back during the logging days out here in the 30s. But he would go up and down this road, and you'd have a whole crowd of these freeloaders from back down on Jim Deal Road, and he would be paying for everybody the whole time until his money ran out. And somewhere in that span of time, he'd tear that Cadillac, all the pieces that he got, and he'd be running a tab at the bars. He'd have to run a tab because he knew he was good for it until he got his next check the next quarter, and he'd be right back at it again, drinking, playing, and spending money.
Oh, that's a great story. Awesome.
I'm drinking some great rum to go with it.
There you go. Thank you, Lucky.